There we go.
All right. Well, good afternoon. This is the Central Office Administrative Review Subcommittee. Call to order. And we have to read the statement.
This meeting will be recorded and will be posted to YouTube and other social media platforms. By participating in this meeting, you understand that the recording could contain your video stream or your audio stream, including images of yourself or anyone in the room with you. If you choose to enable your video or audio device during the meeting, as well as anything or anyone else that may be in the background, could be recorded. The recording could include any opinions you contribute and anything you say about yourself. On occasion, chat within the meeting could also be captured in the meeting recording. Therefore, anyone attending the recording meeting may have aspects of their personal data recorded, if they actively participate or not.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else in Zoom land?
Nope.
Not at this time?
And if we
Okay.
do, they'll pop right up on the screen because it's already enabled.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for coming this afternoon. A short meeting. Praneema, thank you. Wanted to ask a couple of questions. And the agenda really is discussion of Student Advisory Council and discussion of student representation on the Quabbin Regional School District School Committee. That's no answers today. There's no decisions today. This has been driven, why the item came up. It came up, Walter brought it up a couple of years ago, and we just didn't have, we had lots of stuff going on at the time. And then we had Sheila leaving in January or giving us notice. And it's not about changing or what we need to do different at Quabbin or the school committee. It is really to understand, how do we do our student advisory council? How do you do that with your student government? And are there different ways for us to be able to look for any other ways of having a student voice? That's really about the beginning of look at that. I'll turn it over to you in a sec.
Yeah.
And talk to Jess. And Jess, in our packet, is the language about Chapter 71, Section 38M is the first part of the entirety here. The first part was she meaning Jess, put a little query out on the little listserv. So Tracy Novick responded, so that's what she wrote. And then from other school districts that wrote at the time. Granted, she probably did it last week. A lot of schools are starting. I'm okay on that, but it's just wanting to know how we do it. What does the principal think? How did she run that? What does the superintendent? What are our perspectives on this? So dealing with the Student Advisory Council, what happens at the high school? Can you share with us about what you've walked into and what have you done, and what is there anything that you'd like to share further for us as we investigate on this? Am I getting it correctly?
Sure.
Is that right?
I assume we do have a student advisory council, right?
So we do.
I thought so, because they're the ones that come in sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Talk to us.
And then they also have ones that are on the state board, and like, that's why, so. over to you.
So to define the two and what's different, so we have a student council.
A student council.
And we have a student advisory council.
Oh, okay.
So the student
Okay.
advisory council works with DESE, with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And so they attend monthly meetings. I think it's monthly or bi-monthly meetings. Depending on where they're located, our kids probably go to Worcester somewhere. And so they attend meetings with other students across the state, and they have topics and goals that they work on in conjunction with DESE. So in this language, when it refers to Student Advisory Council, usually you have two members. Typically, they're selected by election, and oftentimes, they end up being selected junior year, and then they stay for senior year.
Perfect. So we do.
Okay.
I think if I can recall, for last year, we had one representative we're looking to expand that to 2.
Okay, so you're expanding it to 2?
We would
Okay.
love to expand it to 2. I'm also really excited about the idea of potentially having a student part of the school committee meetings to have a voice. I think it's really important because we can plan everything we want, but, their perspective is how are things going? My only key pieces to think about is being mindful that the student represents 6 through 12. So, and how would we do that in the process? So if you have a representative who's sharing their thoughts, perhaps a senior or a junior, here, how are they can definitely speak to some of the high school pieces. How are they getting their data to talk about some of the middle schools? And we're such a large school, so just something to think about is sort of moving forward. I think often we hear the high school voices.
Yep.
They're older, they're more articulate. They have more to talk about in terms of internships and projects. We just want to be sure, however we do this, we have a process where whoever's coming to you has informed data, because then you're getting everything. We want to be mindful of efficiency, the person is consistent, reliable, and can communicate and get facets of information correctly.
Right.
So I think it's a great, great tool. I've seen middle school representative and high school at school committees as a model. So you
Okay.
have a middle school rep and a high school rep, and they work together and they join. That's potentially a model. Another would be a senior or junior high school rep, but they get information and data. That's correct. So they're not giving you,
Is that also from your student council?
yes,
Okay, so you really then have information and data and topics of concern, ideas that bubble up from the student council.
yes.
How many do you have on the student council? I know it's just schools just starting, I understand that.
Right now, 0.
Okay,
To
okay,
be transparent, but that is one thing we need to get up and running.
okay.
So I think we wanted the school to 1 or 2 weeks settled with
Absolutely.
schedule, flex, we've got a lot of moving parts. And we're going to have school-wide grade level assemblies. And that will be one topic that's going to come up for the
Okay.
PSA, and that's starting next week. So there's not huge lag time, but we've got a few assemblies for next week and then the week after planned. So 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th, each have a grade level assembly. We would talk about that piece and their voices and who would be interested.
So, okay, so when my son was a rep, and he actually was for about a year and a half, he was elected as a student senator. Where does that fit in within the student council? In other words, he was, I guess the principal at the time thought that he was, I don't know whether it was kind of like, okay, who wants to do this or whatever, but he volunteered, he was chosen, and he took it very seriously because he pretty much made every meeting. But he was elected by his fellow students as a student senator.
My guess is your son older than 28 that you're referring to?
No, he graduated in 15.
2000.
No, excuse me. Let me get this. Yeah, 15.
15, okay. I'm wondering if that was the model prior to Student Advisory Council. So student councils also choose the Student Advisory Council members. I wonder if it used to be called Student Senate or something
I
like that.
don't know. I'm just wondering what the.
Yeah.
Use that term,
We don't
have that,
currently
okay.
use it, but I'm thinking maybe it was like the precursor to this student advisory or
Yeah,
something.
it could be because he was voted in as a junior, and
Yeah.
then at that point, I guess there was no senior that wanted to really do it, so he did it as a junior.
Yeah.
And he segued right into senior year, voted again in, and had the same position and carried it through the whole year.
Right, I remember, and he'd be the representative to speak at school committee.
Right, and he, at that time, it was only, of course, it wasn't middle high school, it was middle school and high school. So, I mean, he represented the high school. We didn't really, my recollection was, aside from whatever middle school person might come in, just as part of a student coming to class, there was no designated representative from the middle school. So that would be, as you brought up, a different thing. So I would think that whoever would do this would be from covering the 6th to the 12th grade. And unless we thought, something different might.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fine model.
Yeah.
I just, whoever we would envision doing this, to be sure we get the voice of the middle school as well.
Right.
And it could be any model, maybe we're just a large school.
That would
A lot of facets of information. We want to make sure we get the right feedback.
And he would, he cast his net wide, but he would come in and, in fact, I remember, much to my chagrin, I think, that we were pushing the International Baccalaureate, and we were like in our first year. And one of the members at one point asked him, how, that was one of the questions. And he was negative in the sense that he thought it was representing only a certain segment of the student population. And he thought there was a big part of the student population that really was not being looked at, that weren't going to be, weren't going to go into IB, but yet what are we doing for that? I mean, that was his presentation, and he articulated what other students were saying to him. So, I don't, you can't prejudge how somebody's going to do it, but we would want somebody that would pick up things that may be something the school committee, isn't even pushing for or does not recognize. I mean, that person needs to be their own person. So as if to say, you guys are doing this, but here's how the students feel. That's what we need to hear. We need that. That's sort of as the kings would have the jester, who would be the only one that really would take the king.
We have many.
By the scruff of the neck, because all the advisors wanted to tell the king what the king wanted to hear. The jester was the only one that didn't. So we would need a jester type, individual.
And I gather, like, historically, and that's okay, we as a committee, as you do know, we'd like to hear from students. So we did, so it sounded like it was superintendent principal driven. Am I correct, Colleen? Would you?
Inviting people?
Yes.
Yeah, so we would reach out and say, bring us some student reps.
Right.
Yeah,
That's historically what we've
Yeah.
been doing.
yeah.
And then and like you said, now, I do remember when you said it was a Senate, he was the representative and that type of thing.
Yeah, I think each class elected, my recollection was each class elected 2 senators. So freshman, sophomore,
Part of
junior,
class
senior.
officers.
So there were like 8
Okay.
senators.
We just call them class officers.
Okay.
We don't
Yeah.
say president, vice president,
Okay.
treasury,
Yeah.
so we've got other designations, but same idea.
Right,
Exactly.
right, yeah.
I mean, I do think the importance of consistency and reliability is something to think about, right? So what we lose by bringing different people each month is, I mean, I suppose it's, you lose and gain, right? You're always getting a different perspective, but by having the same person here, I wonder if that might give us a more consistent
But
perspective.
Colleen, that does not negate any principal or whatever teacher would ever
Right.
say, hey, our students are doing, here's the music group is doing this. I have a junior and a senior that wish to speak. We will still hear,
Yeah.
we will want to hear
Yeah,
those people.
Okay,
But
good.
this, I mean, to me, this is a
So
unique,
this is in addition.
yes, this is in addition, it's a unique person who's going to sit here
If we
at our
yeah,
table, if we
yeah.
do this
Yeah.
on a monthly or whatever
Monthly
basis.
basis, quarterly or whatever. That's why we'll look into it and we'll see what you think, feel,
Okay.
I feel a lot of value in having a student voice here, who's consistent, who's articulate, who can express, you don't want a yes man either, but you want somebody who will be here on time, who knows the school and who's going to they'll give it to you straight. We've got very articulate kids who tell us when we're doing things incorrectly.
Oh, no, yeah.
Give us feedback on, the impact of some of our decisions. I think that's really important. I do see value in the presentations that we have, so
Absolutely.
there's a whole, it's like, there's 2 different things we're talking about. So to be informed at the first level, I don't think the student necessarily who's the consistent month to month or meeting to meeting student could present something in music the way the 2 music performers do.
Right.
Or if you've experienced a trip and gone on it, presenting that aspect firsthand, that's a whole different piece. So I think they're different, and I think there's value to both. I think having a rep who they'll learn a lot of this process, as a student has a leadership role representing our school. I think that's a huge piece, and we would absolutely ask them to really keep in mind some of the middle school pieces. We've got middle school teachers who can work with the student before the meeting to give them updates
Yep.
on sort of things going on. We can figure that out.
And then
Just make sure they're informed.
And then on the state level, I remember when the gentleman came must have been May or June.
Yeah, I was going to say
White
2 or 3
yeah.
months ago.
Yeah, mental health was a big
That was the
issue
focus, yep.
was, and they were looking at next year, things like that. So, yeah, it has value. I just kind of wanted to see where the administration feels, what they think and feel about it. And at the same time, not that I have to follow any certain thing here, because each, I should say, school committees do have representation of student, I should say student representation in various ways. So it's not and then, do you give them authority? No, I would say no. In other words, they're not a voting
Yeah,
member.
I think
And
it says they should not be a voting member.
no executive
Right.
session, that type of
Right.
stuff. But at least if we're looking at student voice, the school committee hears from what's happening in the schools, which is extremely valuable. Every one of them, it's a large committee, as you know, 15. Every one has supported that perspective. The question was from Walter when he said, oh, look at this. Here's this language. Do we want to follow it? What do we want to do? How do we want to do it if we want it? And then, so there's no agenda here, at least when I was calling the meeting to order or bringing it up last year. What works for us in the best possible way? And if it's representatives that come in from bubbling up, that can speak, and maybe we do we pilot some? I don't know. But at least we have we can do a little research. I don't mind, I know, Walter, you're doing the physical plan and the security. If you want to take the lead on this, that's fine. I can help, or I can take the lead. I don't mind doing that, working with Pranina and the superintendent, and see what we want to do as well as for us. Do we reach out to any other school committees? Do we hear? Do we just see how's it working? What are the pitfalls? Are there any pitfalls to it?
I don't think we need to reach out to any of us. We have this. I think we kind of know what we want to do. Let's just go with it. Let's work with it. I think Walter should take it.
I think one of the benefits of this is too, it might create a two-way communication. The student can go back to the students and say, you don't know all the stuff that goes on in a school committee meeting, and so that might be valuable. I mean, it's hard for them to talk to every student, but they can. And the other thing, this law, or whatever it is, contemplates a student advisory committee of 5 members. So I'm thinking, I don't know, in my mind anyway, maybe we could have an advisory member from each grade level. I don't know. Does that make sense?
At each meeting, at every meeting?
No. But
at the school. The council itself is composed of 1 member from each grade level, and then perhaps the senior would be the person. Well, they would have to elect them, but that would be the person that would be the representative. And then they could bring those individual reps in every now and then. Like the 8th grade rep could come in at one meeting, and the 9th grade rep maybe could. I mean, I'm just throwing this out here.
Yeah. I kind of, in my mind, I almost I kind of see it like a dichotomy of what we normally do with our kids coming in. I would like, not to say I wouldn't want a student rep, school committee rep to, report stuff every month, but I would like to see that rep sitting here, and then when you make a presentation or we bring somebody in to make a presentation, whatever, I would like to see that rep ask the questions of those people from the student's point of view. I'm not looking so much as the rep to sit there and say, here's what's going on in school this month. I'm looking at that rep to be to be a school committee member, to do what school committee members do, and ask the questions from obviously it's more of a student's point of view, but we sit here and Mark's, you're good because that's what we do. But when these kids come up and we say, oh, we're happy to see you, blah, 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 blah. I'd like to see that person, student angle in on people that show up here and comment upon everything we go through, maybe, voting for, even when we just do something, I don't want to say mundane, but it's almost like rubber stamp of voting for a trip to Italy, trip here or there. We ask a couple questions. They could bring a different aspect to it too. I mean, they might say, gee, not every kid can afford $2,500. Wouldn't it be something to look for that, might be a lesser spot where other kids could travel or something? I mean, I don't know, but that's what I'd like to see. I mean, I would like to see a school committee member, the student as a school committee member, not a voting member, obviously, but sitting as a school committee member with hopefully the chutzpah to ask the tougher questions if he or she wants to ask those questions. I mean, that's the way I looked at it.
And when you're looking at the student councils and looking at this, you can, as you're doing that, as you're unrolling that out to build that, the committees that the student committees, can you bring this up to them that we're delving into this, we're looking to this, what do they think? Are they will, and then who's got some of the other skills that would want to do this.
Who's got the chutzpah?
Exactly.
I have a few in mind right now, honestly, in a good way.
And if Walter, if you want to dive a little into me for us on this would be great if you'd like to work on this. Do you want to take a lead on this?
No, I don't need to take a lead on it.
You don't want to take a lead?
Well, I mean, I will if you want, but I mean, it's, you guys have some great ideas here, so,
Well, we all.
and the administration certainly is capable.
So then then maybe the three of us, rather than just, the three of us, we can at least look a little further, see what you get for interest.
Sure.
And at the same time, I'd like to know the superintendent of do you like that type of?
Oh, I love it. My son did it for years.
I mean, if you
But
want me to
I
be
think
like
it's-
the kind of contact person. with
I think maybe what we need to think about is just sort of like, if we want to think about what qualities we would hope to see in a person who sits, it might be helpful to put that out. So when the students are voting and considering, they're choosing a person who's going to kind of have that mindset that we're looking for a little bit. The other thing that I just want to put out there is many of our students get really, really busy. So if this is something we're going to commit to, I want to be fair to them around what are our expectations for if the meeting starts to run really late. Can we have their part on early? Just things because they have a lot of commitments between sports and homework. I also think a good idea would be to have an alternate.
Yep.
So that,
Right.
you know what I mean? So if
Yeah,
you're
someone
saying we
would
have a advisory committee member from these grade levels, maybe the senior is, or maybe they're more comfortable having two kids together sometimes, whatever. That doesn't matter to me. They're not voting, but, I think like Purnima, it's a great opportunity. I think we have some really good kids, but in all fairness to them, I don't want them to get into something that they're, not comfortable with or can't commit to. And that, we want to find that right kid that maybe, has some interest in this area and wants to leverage their voice.
Well, like every school committee member, we don't make every single meeting.
Right.
So-
Yes, that's true, Walter.
And not every school committee member has a strong voice out there at times. They sit back, they may not participate, and that still is okay, because they're part of that 15 with the voting and the ability to gather the information to be informed, to make a decision.
And I
about something.
think, Lee, what you were sort of alluding to was we're not expecting a presentation from this kid at every meeting, right?
Right.
So like letting them know that's not what we're looking
Right,
for.
that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, and
agree.
another thing to consider maybe is if, I'm presuming, I will presume it will be a senior, but obviously we don't know that. But if it's a senior, could it be part of their senior,
Project.
Their project.
Yeah.
so that, as you say, so,
They could
I mean,
get community
it could be a
surveys.
time commitment. So as you say, that could be
Yes.
part of the thing. And,
Yeah.
they could write up whatever, represent whatever as part of their final paper or whatever
Yep,
it is.
that's a
So,
great idea.
I mean, something to look at.
I love the way you described sort of the active role that the student would have. I think there is value in the consistency of being at meetings, although quiet or not quiet or active, you can make connections in September. Oh, discuss that. Oh, I'm just thinking you guys talked about this in September. I'm kind of linking it to October's discussion where somebody would start new each time. So that consistency, I think, is going to be important. I'm happy to go back to with some parameters and setting up a kid with success, knowing that this is what they're walking into, community service, absolutely. And finding an alternate in case of I'll definitely, carve some time to do a little bit of this work and link with you, Colleen, and
Yep.
however you'd like to share that piece. And I also want to point out, our IB mission revolves around student choice, voice, and agency. Those are the three platforms. So having a student voice wherever we may.
Right.
That's one of our core beliefs as an international baccalaureate school. So it fits right in. I mean, we were advocates of whether we want to hear sometimes their voice or not is a different story, but it's really, really important that we have mechanisms, surveys for all student voices, especially at the leadership level, so they can make the change. They're feeling the impact of every decision we make. So
Exactly. Good. So
great.
why don't we at least see how September rolls out, see how the interest, and we'll meet again, because we wanted to at least look to see, do we want to have a student rep in our own way that we can create with their support, their backup with each other, and at the same time being involved in that. Because I honestly believe that not only can students see what boards do, but does that give a spark to them about what is community involvement, whatever that is. I don't care if it's a professional organization, is it community-based, is it,
It's their civic role.
civic, what's civics, exactly.
Yep.
I honestly think there's this country and some of the anger and the faults and the disfaults and everything else is, I think we as, not Quabbin, but I think as in general, we can do more with the civics understanding. And people have to feel comfortable in their own skin to be able to want to participate and be in that, because they're representing not only their peers, but also Quabbin, but also of leadership, because it is of leadership to be in that role.
Absolutely.
And to be able to,
I think they'll gain and we'll gain with them. It's a two-way gain.
So just for next steps, I just sent you all the notes from today to your school committee accounts.
okay,
So I guess my question is, Purnima's going to kind of work on, here are the responsibilities. She'll meet with her student council folks and the kids and start to get things underway. I'm assuming you're just going to bring this to the committee and say that the recommendation is that we add a student. I don't think you actually have to vote on it because we're supposed to have a student on our school committee anyway according to this. But you may want to vote on it. Right? Is that going to be our next step? Or do you want her to bring the information back before you talk about it?
I would think information back
Yeah, I
first.
think, I would bet, if you represent, whoever presents the school committee, I would rather not say, okay, here's what we're looking at and we'll get back to you. I'd rather get something as solid as possible
Got
and
it.
say, here's what we've got, here's what we've done, here's what.
So we should have one more meeting before we
Yes.
bring it to school committee.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Do you want to set that date now? Because I can put it right in the notes.
Yeah, let's do it. What do you think? In
Yeah, I think
September?
I need about 2 weeks at the most to kind of, between,
Here, you're going to want
Last
Ms.
meetings and-
Marinelli back and,
You
right?
get yeah, let's do end of September. That gives plenty of time.
anytime, yeah.
So,
Come on.
I'll
okay.
have Jess send out, check with you guys, good
Okay.
dates and end of September.
End of September. Good. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Sure.
All right, and adjourn.